Hi there, welcome to our channel. You're Doing What? A channel dedicated to full-time RVing in your later decades and enjoying life every single day by doing that. I kind of have thought that I was born to be a vagabond, really. My husband not so much, but I'm really enjoying what we're doing. So I want to tell you today about one of the really particular joys of traveling this country is staying off the freeways and using the smaller roads. Now, in a great big rig, you do have to be aware of underpass heights and bridge restrictions for weight. But in general, and I think I mentioned this to you one other time, in general, if you see the big 18-wheeler trucks on a road, you can be pretty confident that your rig will fit. So, and do just fine. So I remember my mother, way back in the probably mid-'80s, gave me a book entitled Blue Highways, written by a man named, just a second, I have to get I always get this messed up, William Least Heat, H-E-A-T, Moon. And it was written in 1982. He wrote this book after, I guess, kind of a bad divorce or breakup, and he just took off for a few months in a van and traveled the country using only blue highways. So for those of you who might be too young to know this or to remember it, the Rand McNally maps used to color code the type of highway that you were on. So big freeways were color coded one way, main routes another way, usually red. And the blue highways were the highways that were less traveled out in the rural parts of our country. And sometimes they were usually paved, but sometimes not. And sometimes they were 4-lane, but usually just 2-lane. And his book became famous among people who do like to travel in this country and see the smaller communities. Now, I can tell you that small communities, sorry for the movement around with the phone, with the camera, sorry. Anyway, small highways lead you to wonderful small communities in this country. And I can tell you that the most interesting museums we've ever seen have been in very small communities. There's one particular museum that I think about in terms of American life and out west, in the western part of this country, in Deming, New Mexico. It's a little city municipal museum that looks to me like has collected all kinds of things from residents of that community over the years and filled their museum with the indications of life in that town over probably the last 120 years. And it was fascinating to walk through. And the museum was in a house, and so you went from room to room, and each room had a theme, and it was fascinating. The other really cool museum I think about a lot when I think about small communities is a museum in Lander, Wyoming, that houses a tremendous art collection by Native Americans who were, I guess imprisoned is the best way to put it, by U.S. cavalry in forts in the West back in the mid-1800s to late 1800s. And they drew on old accounting books that were just kind of in a heap and nobody needed anymore. So they would turn the page over and do beautiful, beautiful artwork, memorializing their way of life before they were imprisoned in these on these forts and by the cavalry. I never would have heard of this type of art had we not stopped in this little museum in little town of Lander, which maybe has a population of 6,000 people. And tomorrow, hopefully, we're going to go to another small town, small community in the West, and see a museum dedicated to rope tying, if you can imagine. So I'm interested to see what this museum has to offer. Anyway, the blue highways. So when you get off on a blue highway and drive, you really have to slow down, probably to 55-ish in terms of the speed that you're driving, 55, and you go through towns. You don't pass them by like the freeway has you pass by with an exit off. You must drive through them. And that's the joy of the blue highways, even though they're not blue anymore. But the small rural roads that take you into places in this country that are phenomenal and fantastic, with just interesting things to see, interesting people to talk to. It's sometimes harder to find a place to park your RV because some of these highways don't really cater to big RV parks, but you can always find some place to stop and spend the night. And it's a wonderful way to see our country, not just see the country from a not just see the country from a 4-lane interstate. So I encourage you to travel the blue highways. If you find my videos and the channel an interesting source of information for travel, especially in your later years, please hit the subscribe button and like or share my video as well. And I will see you next time when we're going to ask ourselves, you're doing what?